The vast emptiness of space stretched before the Earth Confederation ship Dauntless as it led a small scout fleet beyond the borders of known territory. Commander Henry Blake stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. His weathered face showed little emotion, but the slight tapping of his fingers against the command console betrayed his excitement. "Anything on long-range scanners, Officer Grant?" Blake asked, turning to his science officer. Lisa Grant, a woman whose intelligence was matched only by her curiosity, shook her head. "Nothing yet, Commander. Wait." Her eyes widened as she studied the readings on her console. "I'm picking up an unusual signal, sir. It's not matching any known patterns in our database." Blake nodded and turned to communications specialist Noah Carter, a younger officer known for his quick wit and keen observational skills. "Can you isolate that signal, Carter?" "Working on it, sir," Carter replied, his fingers dancing across his console. "It's definitely artificial, but the encoding is unlike anything I've seen before. Definitely not from one of our colonies." The bridge fell silent as the crew of the Dauntless processed this information. The fleet, consisting of the flagship Dauntless, the science vessel Horizon, and the support ship Guardian, had been exploring this sector for 3 weeks without encountering anything of significance. "Set course to investigate," Blake ordered. "Alert the Horizon and Guardian to follow our lead. Tell them to maintain standard formation, but be ready for anything." The fleet adjusted course, heading toward the source of the mysterious signal. As they drew closer, the stars seemed to shift, and a massive shape emerged from the darkness. "My God," whispered Grant, staring at her readings. "That ship is enormous, nearly 10 times our size." The alien vessel dwarfed even the largest Earth ships, its hull gleaming with strange symbols and what appeared to be weapon ports. It hung in space like a predator, silent and imposing. "Defensive posture," Blake ordered calmly. "But no weapons hot. We're here to explore, not start a war." Carter's console suddenly lit up. "Sir, they're hailing us." Blake straightened his uniform. On screen, the view screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with pale blue skin and elongated features. The alien wore elaborate robes covered in what appeared to be military decorations. "Attention, vessel of unknown origin," the alien began in surprisingly clear English. "You have entered the sovereign territory of the Altarian Empire, rulers of the 7 sectors and masters of 1,000 worlds. State your business or prepare to be boarded for inspection." Blake exchanged a quick glance with Grant before responding. "This is Commander Henry Blake of the Earth Confederation ship Dauntless. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration and mean no harm." The alien's expression remained unchanged. "Earth Confederation. We have no record of such a government. Your vessels appear primitive. You will power down your engines and prepare to receive our envoy. The glorious empire welcomes all who acknowledge its supremacy." As the transmission ended, Blake noticed Carter struggling to maintain his professional composure. "Something funny, Specialist?" Blake asked quietly. Carter cleared his throat. "Sorry, sir. It's just, did they say primitive? Their comm technology is using compression algorithms we abandoned 50 years ago. And those weapon ports, they're standard fusion exhausts, inefficient ones at that." Grant nodded in agreement. "Commander, preliminary scans show their technology is, well, significantly behind ours in several key areas." Blake allowed himself a small smile. "Let's not mention that during our first meeting, shall we? Lieutenant Walker, prepare a greeting party. It seems we're about to make first contact with an empire that doesn't realize who they're talking to." The docking procedure took nearly an hour as the Imperial shuttle struggled to align with the Dauntless's reception bay. Commander Blake watched from the observation deck, noting how the alien craft used manual thrusters instead of the automated docking systems that had been standard on Earth vessels for decades. "They're having trouble with our artificial gravity field," Lisa Grant observed quietly. "Their systems aren't calibrated for it." Blake nodded. Let's not mention that either. First impressions matter. The reception area had been prepared according to diplomatic protocols. Blake stood at the front, flanked by Grant, Carter, and a small security team led by Officer Diane Ward. The airlock cycled open, and Ambassador Zorn of the Altarian Empire stepped through. The ambassador was taller in person, nearly 7 feet, with an elaborate headdress that added another foot to his height. His robes shimmered with metallic thread and strange symbols. Behind him came 4 guards in ornate armor carrying what appeared to be energy weapons. "I greet you on behalf of the Eternal Empire," Zorn announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You stand in the presence of the 37th envoy of the Emperor's Outer Reach Division." Blake stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Ambassador Zorn, welcome aboard the Dauntless. I'm Commander Henry Blake of the Earth Confederation." Zorn's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the reception area. "Your vessel is smaller than I expected. The Empire's smallest scout ships are twice this size." "We value efficiency," Blake replied diplomatically. "Indeed. Your species is unknown to our vast database. How many worlds do you control?" Zorn asked, making no effort to hide his condescension. "We have settlements on 12 planets and mining operations on 30 more," Blake answered truthfully, though leaving out the hundreds of space stations and orbital habitats. Zorn visibly relaxed. "A minor presence, then. The Empire spans thousands of star systems. Our civilization has existed for 12 millennia. Your cooperation will be rewarded with protection and trade opportunities." Carter coughed slightly, covering what might have been a laugh. Blake shot him a warning glance. "We'd be interested in learning more about your empire," Blake said. "Perhaps we could discuss this in our conference room." The Imperial delegation followed Blake through the corridors of the Dauntless. Zorn's guards eyed the human technology with poorly disguised interest, whispering to each other in their native language. "Your translation technology is impressive," Grant commented as they walked. "How does it function?" Zorn puffed up with pride. "The Empire developed neural interface translators 3 centuries ago. Each of my guards carries a device that processes your primitive language and feeds the translation directly to our brains." Grant nodded politely, not mentioning that Earth had abandoned neural interfaces due to their inefficiency compared to the biological language implants most humans now received in childhood. In the conference room, refreshments had been prepared. Zorn examined the offered drink with suspicion before taking a cautious sip. "You have questions about the Empire," Zorn stated. "That is natural. All new species do." "We're curious about your technological development," Blake said carefully, "particularly your propulsion systems. The Empire's ships are powered by 5th-generation quantum fusion drives," Zorn declared proudly. "Nothing in the known galaxy travels faster." Under the table, Grant's foot gently tapped Blake's. He knew what she was thinking. Earth had moved beyond quantum fusion to zero-point energy systems nearly 50 years ago. "Impressive," Blake replied with a straight face. "And your weapons technology. Our plasma cannons can reduce a planet to ash in days," Zorn boasted, unaware that Earth's defense systems could neutralize such attacks in seconds. As the meeting continued, Blake received a discreet message on his neural link from Earth Command. "Maintain peaceful contact. Gather intelligence. Do not reveal technological superiority. Reinforcements en route." Blake smiled at Ambassador Zorn. "The Earth Confederation looks forward to peaceful relations with the Altarian Empire. We have much to learn from each other." Zorn nodded, completely missing the subtle exchange of glances among the human officers. "The Empire is always generous to those who acknowledge its greatness," he replied. Science officer Lisa Grant hunched over her workstation in the Dauntless's research lab, analyzing the data collected during Ambassador Zorn's visit. The door slid open as Commander Blake entered. "Please tell me you have something," Blake said, his voice low. Grant looked up, a slight smile playing on her lips. "More than something, Commander. Their entire propulsion system is based on controlled fusion reactions. They're literally burning fuel to move through space." "You're joking," Blake said, leaning over to examine her findings. I wish I were. Their advanced quantum fusion drive is essentially what we used before the gravity manipulation breakthrough a century ago. They're burning resources at an alarming rate just to maintain standard operations. Blake shook his head in disbelief. What about their weapons systems? Plasma-based, as the ambassador claimed, Grant replied. Destructive, yes, but completely vulnerable to our magnetic deflection shields. Even the Guardian could withstand a direct hit without significant damage. The communicator on Blake's wrist beeped. Commander, this is Carter. You need to hear this. Go ahead, Blake responded. I've been monitoring their communications, Carter began, excitement evident in his voice. Their encryption is, well, it's barely encryption by our standards. I've decoded most of it. The Empire isn't expanding, sir. It's contracting. They've lost 30 systems in the past decade to something they call the Drift. The Drift? Grant asked. From what I can gather, it's some kind of resource depletion crisis, Carter explained. They're desperately searching for new energy sources. That's why they're out here, in what they consider the frontier. Blake's eyes met Grant's. So the mighty Empire is actually desperate, Grant finished. And we just appeared with technology they can't comprehend. The realization hung in the air between them. The Altarian Empire, for all its grandeur and claims of superiority, was a civilization in decline, clinging to outdated technology and depleting resources. Commander, Carter's voice came through again. There's more. They're planning a formal dinner aboard their flagship tonight. Something about impressing the primitives. Blake couldn't suppress a chuckle. Well, we should accept their gracious invitation. Earth Command wants us to maintain peaceful contact. How do we handle this? Grant asked. If they realize how far behind they are. We don't need to reveal everything, Blake replied thoughtfully. We play along, gather information, and wait for Admiral Wells to arrive with the diplomatic corps. Later that evening, the human delegation boarded the Imperial flagship. The vessel was indeed massive, but Blake and his officers immediately noticed the inefficiencies in its design, wasted space, redundant systems, and excessive ornamentation at the expense of functionality. The Imperial dining hall was a cavernous room filled with alien dignitaries. Ambassador Zorn greeted them with elaborate ceremony. Commander Blake, we have prepared a demonstration of Imperial technology that I believe will impress even the most advanced civilizations, Zorn announced proudly. With a flourish, he activated a device in the center of the room. A three-dimensional image appeared, showing star systems and planets in remarkable detail. Our holographic mapping system, Zorn explained, developed over 3 centuries of Imperial research. Noah Carter bit his lip to keep from laughing. Children on Earth played with more sophisticated holographic toys. The meal progressed with increasingly grandiose demonstrations. Each time, the human officers maintained their diplomatic composure while exchanging subtle glances. When Zorn proudly displayed their revolutionary water recycling system, Officer Ward had to excuse herself to maintain her composure. Is your security officer well? Zorn asked, concerned by her sudden departure. Just adjusting to your ship's atmosphere, Blake explained smoothly. Our species sometimes needs time to adapt. As the dinner concluded, Zorn leaned toward Blake. Tomorrow, we will show you our military capabilities. Then you will truly understand the benefits of Imperial protection. Blake nodded solemnly. We look forward to it, Ambassador. The Earth Confederation is always eager to learn from others. Back on the Dauntless, the senior officers finally let their laughter flow freely. They have no idea, Carter gasped between chuckles. No idea at all. And we're going to keep it that way, Blake reminded them, at least until Admiral Wells arrives. The next morning, Commander Blake received word that Admiral Catherine Wells had arrived with 3 additional Earth Confederation vessels. Her flagship, the Resolute, took position at a respectful distance from the Imperial fleet. Admiral on deck, announced Officer Ward as Wells stepped through the airlock onto the Dauntless. Admiral Wells was a tall woman with short gray hair and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded exploration missions for 15 years and had encountered 17 different alien species during her career. At ease, she said, nodding to the assembled officers, "Commander Blake, walk with me." As they moved through the corridor, Blake briefed her on the situation. "So they believe they're technologically superior?" Wells asked, her lips twitching slightly. "Completely convinced of it, Admiral. They're planning a military demonstration today to impress us." Wells shook her head. "Have they scanned our ships properly?" "Their scanning technology is limited. They've detected our hull composition and basic power signatures, but they can't penetrate our adaptive shielding. They have no idea about our actual capabilities." The Admiral considered this information. Earth Command believes this could be an opportunity. The Altarians control substantial territory, even if they're in decline. A peaceful alliance would be preferable to any misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? Blake raised an eyebrow. "If they realize how outmatched they are, they might react unpredictably." Wells explained, "Pride is dangerous, Commander, especially wounded pride." 3 hours later, the human delegation boarded shuttles to the Imperial command vessel for the promised demonstration. Admiral Wells led the group, with Blake, Grant, and Carter providing context through private neural communications. Ambassador Zorn greeted them with even more pomp than before, clearly impressed by Admiral Wells' formal uniform and confident bearing. "Admiral, we are honored by your presence," he said with a deep bow. "The Imperial Fleet Commander has prepared a special demonstration of our military might." Wells smiled diplomatically. "We look forward to observing your capabilities, Ambassador." The demonstration area was a massive observation deck overlooking space. Through the transparent walls, they could see several Imperial warships maneuvering into position. "Behold," announced the Imperial Fleet Commander, a stern-faced Altarian with elaborate facial markings, "our 7th battle group, equipped with the Empire's most advanced weaponry." The Imperial ships began a choreographed display, firing what appeared to be plasma beams at designated targets. The energy discharges created impressive visual effects, but Science Officer Grant's discreet analysis confirmed they were significantly less powerful than Earth's standard defensive weapons. "The Imperial heavy cruiser can destroy a small moon with sustained fire," the fleet commander boasted. Admiral Wells nodded appreciatively. "Very impressive. The formations your ships maintain show exceptional training." The compliment, focused on the crews rather than the technology, was deliberate. Wells had no desire to lie directly about the weapon's capabilities. "Perhaps," Zorn suggested eagerly, "you would share a demonstration of Earth's defensive capabilities. A simple display to compare our technologies." Wells and Blake exchanged glances. This was delicate territory. "We would be honored," Wells replied carefully. "However, our vessels are primarily exploration and diplomatic crafts. Our defensive systems are modest by comparison." This wasn't exactly a lie. Earth ships were designed for multiple purposes, with defense being only one aspect of their engineering. "Nevertheless," Wells continued, "we would welcome a joint exercise, perhaps something symbolic to represent our emerging friendship." The fleet commander seemed disappointed by this diplomatic deflection, but agreed. "We shall arrange a synchronized maneuver between our vessels." As the Imperial officials discussed the details, Carter leaned close to Blake. "They're still scanning us," he whispered, "trying to penetrate our hulls with some kind of resonance beam." Blake nodded slightly. "Let them try. The adaptive shielding will just feed them the data we want them to see." Admiral Wells observed the Imperial ships with a practiced eye. "Their formation has a significant blind spot on the port side," she noted through the neural link, "and their reaction time to course changes is nearly triple what it should be." "What's our play here, Admiral?" Blake asked quietly. "Restraint, Commander," she replied. "Complete restraint. We show them just enough to earn their respect without revealing our true capabilities. Earth needs allies, not subjects." The fleet commander returned, presenting a datapad with a proposed joint exercise. "We accept," Admiral Wells said with a smile that revealed nothing of her thoughts. "Let us demonstrate what our civilizations can accomplish together." The joint exercise began smoothly enough. The Imperial vessels moved in their practiced formations, while the Earth ships maintained respectful distances and performed basic maneuvers. Admiral Wells had ordered her captains to use only minimal thrusters, keeping their true acceleration capabilities hidden. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Commander Blake and Admiral Wells stood alongside Ambassador Zorn and the Imperial fleet commander. The atmosphere was cordial, though Blake noticed several junior Imperial officers whispering among themselves while glancing at the human delegation. "Your vessels move with precision," the fleet commander remarked, though his tone suggested he was unimpressed by the seemingly simple maneuvers of the Earth ships. "Thank you," Wells replied. "We focus on efficiency over spectacle." One of the junior Imperial officers, a young Altarian named Sub-Commander Krell, approached the fleet commander and spoke in hushed tones. Blake couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear enough. Krell was agitated, perhaps even eager. The fleet commander frowned and shook his head slightly, but Krell persisted. After a brief argument, the fleet commander reluctantly nodded. "Admiral Wells," he announced, "Sub-Commander Krell has proposed a more dynamic demonstration, a simulated defense scenario to showcase our response capabilities." Wells' expression remained neutral. "What kind of scenario did you have in mind?" "One of our vessels will simulate an attack approach toward your support ship," the fleet commander explained. "We will demonstrate our precision by coming close without actual contact." Blake caught Wells' eye. This hadn't been part of the agreed exercise. Before either could respond, Zorn spoke up. "An excellent suggestion. The humans will witness Imperial precision firsthand." Wells nodded slowly. "Very well. Please ensure your vessel maintains a safe distance. Our defensive protocols are automated in certain situations." The warning was clear, but Sub-Commander Krell, now returning to his station, seemed to take it as a sign of weakness. Through their neural link, Admiral Wells sent a quick message to all Earth ships. "Guardian may face an aggressive approach. No offensive response. Let automated systems handle it. Minimum setting." On the main display, they watched as an Imperial light cruiser broke formation and accelerated toward the Guardian. The Earth vessel remained in position, showing no reaction to the approaching ship. "Your vessel doesn't respond," Zorn noted with surprise. "They're aware of the exercise," Blake replied calmly. The Imperial cruiser continued its approach, but suddenly accelerated beyond the parameters of a simulation. It was now on an actual attack vector. "What is he doing?" the fleet commander demanded, his composure breaking. On the display, they watched as the Imperial cruiser fired a short plasma burst toward the Guardian. It wasn't powerful enough to cause serious damage, but the intent was clear. This was no longer a simulation. Before anyone could react, the Guardian's automated defense system activated. A shimmering field appeared around the Earth vessel, absorbing the plasma burst completely. Then, without firing a single weapon, the Guardian released a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse that disabled the Imperial cruiser's weapons and propulsion systems. The bridge fell silent as the Imperial vessel drifted powerless in space. What just happened?" Zorn finally managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. Admiral Wells turned to the fleet commander, her expression stern but controlled. "I believe your sub-commander misunderstood the nature of our exercise." The fleet commander's face had turned a paler shade of blue. "That was unauthorized. Sub-Commander Krell will be severely disciplined." "Perhaps," interjected a new voice, "this incident can be turned into a diplomatic opportunity." The speaker was Political Officer Edward Lane, who had arrived with Admiral Wells. He stepped forward with a conciliatory smile. "After all, both our civilizations value learning. We've just learned something important about each other, haven't we?" The tension in the room remained, but Lane's diplomatic framing offered everyone a way to save face. The fleet commander nodded slowly. Yes, a learning opportunity. Our deepest apologies for the misunderstanding. As Imperial technicians scrambled to restore power to their disabled cruiser, Admiral Wells and Commander Blake exchanged glances. The Guardian hadn't even used its actual weapons, just a defensive countermeasure considered obsolete by Earth standards. I believe, Wells said carefully, it would be beneficial to continue our discussions in a more formal diplomatic setting. 2 days after the incident, the Imperial flagship received a high-ranking delegation from their home government. The Altarian Imperial negotiator, a stern figure named Vexlor, arrived with an entourage of advisors and security personnel. Commander Blake and Admiral Wells met with the Earth delegation in the conference room of the Dauntless to prepare their approach. "They're scared," Strategic Officer Olivia Daniels observed, reviewing the intercepted communications data. "The Guardian's defensive response has been greatly exaggerated as it passed up their chain of command. Some reports claim we neutralized their cruiser with unknown energy weapons of devastating power." Blake shook his head. It was just a targeted EMP burst. Their systems weren't even permanently damaged. "Perception matters more than reality in diplomacy," Political Officer Lane noted. "This gives us leverage, but we need to be careful not to back them into a corner." Admiral Wells nodded in agreement. "Earth Command has been clear. We want an alliance, not a subjugated empire. Their territory could provide valuable resources and trade routes, but only if they're willing partners." Cultural Officer Paul Wilson, a specialist in alien societies who had been studying the Imperial communications, raised his hand. "I've identified a key weakness in their social structure. The Empire maintains power through a combination of tradition and technological superiority. If their subjects discovered how far behind they actually are, they'd face internal collapse," Daniels finished. "No wonder they're so eager to meet with us now." The meeting with Imperial negotiator Vexlor took place in neutral territory, a conference room hastily prepared on an uninhabited moon in the system. The stark, utilitarian setting was a far cry from the ornate Imperial chambers, a subtle message not lost on the Altarians. "The Eternal Empire values peace above all," Vexlor began, his formal tone at odds with the tension evident in his posture. "The unfortunate incident during our joint exercise was the result of a misguided junior officer who has been appropriately disciplined. These things happen during first contact scenarios." Admiral Wells replied graciously. "The Earth Confederation has no desire for conflict." Vexlor studied her carefully. "Your defensive capabilities are impressive. More advanced than our initial assessment suggested. We've had our share of challenges throughout our history," Wells said, deliberately vague. "Adaptation is a human specialty." Olivia Daniels leaned forward, steering the conversation in a new direction. "We believe both our civilizations could benefit from cooperation rather than competition. Perhaps a technology exchange program." The Imperial negotiator's eyes widened slightly. "You would share your technology with us?" "Certain technologies, yes," Daniels replied. "Those that align with our shared values and goals." The careful phrasing left plenty of room for interpretation. Earth would share technologies that were already becoming obsolete by their standards, but would represent significant advances for the Empire. "And what would the Empire offer in return?" Vexlor asked cautiously. Cultural Officer Wilson stepped in smoothly. "Your civilization has existed for millennia. The knowledge, art, and cultural wisdom accumulated over such time is invaluable. Additionally, your established trade routes and diplomatic relationships with other species would be beneficial to Earth as we expand our peaceful presence in the galaxy." This approach, treating the Empire as an ancient, respected civilization with wisdom to share rather than a technologically inferior society, allowed the Altarians to save face. As the negotiations continued, Blake noticed a subtle shift in the Imperial delegation's demeanor. Their initial fear was giving way to cautious optimism. They still believed they were incorporating a new species into their domain, unaware that humans were carefully reshaping the relationship from a position of strength. "We propose establishing joint research facilities," Daniel suggested, "where our scientists can work together on problems facing both our civilizations, such as resource depletion and energy production." Blake added, knowing this would appeal to the Empire's most pressing concerns. Vexlor exchanged glances with his advisors before nodding. "These terms are acceptable to the Empire. We would welcome Earth's scientists and their innovative perspectives." By the end of the day, the framework for an alliance had been established. The Empire believed they had successfully negotiated a favorable arrangement with a technologically advanced, but politically naive species. The Earth delegation had secured exactly what they wanted: peaceful access to Imperial territory and influence without conflict. 6 months after the first encounter between Earth and the Altarian Empire, Ambassador Henry Blake stood at the observation window of the newly established joint research facility orbiting Altaria Prime. The massive space station represented the cornerstone of the treaty between the two civilizations, a symbol of cooperation and shared progress. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Admiral Catherine Wells asked, joining him at the window. Blake nodded. "Hard to believe it's only been half a year. The Altarians have embraced our cultural exchange program with surprising enthusiasm." Below them, the Imperial capital world glittered with city lights. Earth technicians and scientists had already helped implement several basic human technologies that had revolutionized Altarian power generation and resource management. The Empire celebrated these advances as the benefits of their wise decision to welcome Earth into their domain. "How are they explaining the sudden technological leap to their subject worlds?" Wells asked. "Creative historical revision," Blake replied with a slight smile. "According to official Imperial records, these technologies were developed by Imperial scientists years ago, but were classified until now. The arrival of Earth simply provided the perfect opportunity to implement them." Wells chuckled. "And the Imperial citizens believe that?" "Most do. The Empire has controlled information for centuries. Few question the official narrative." They walked together through the station, passing laboratories where human and Altarian scientists worked side by side. The humans carefully guided their Imperial counterparts toward discoveries the Altarians believed were their own. "Earth Command is pleased with your work, Henry," Wells said as they entered a private conference room. "Your promotion to ambassador was well deserved." Blake nodded in acknowledgement. "And the expansion?" "Proceeding as planned. We now have cultural attaches on 27 Imperial worlds, each one subtly reshaping local governance toward more progressive models." The strategy had been brilliant in its simplicity. Rather than confronting the Empire militarily, which Earth could have done easily, they had chosen influence over dominance. Human advisors now sat on Imperial councils, offering suggestions that were increasingly treated as directives. "And the border worlds?" Blake asked. "Those suffering most under Imperial resource extraction policies have been particularly receptive to our assistance," Wells replied. 3 have already requested Earth representatives to help mediate disputes with Imperial governors." Lisa Grant entered the conference room, now serving as Chief Science Officer for the Joint Research Initiative. "The latest reports from the border worlds show a 40% increase in living standards where we've implemented Earth resource management techniques," she reported. "The Imperial citizens there are beginning to question why the Central worlds haven't adopted these methods sooner. And so the Empire begins to transform from within," Blake observed. Noah Carter joined them, having been promoted to Communications Director for the entire diplomatic mission. "The Imperial communication networks are gradually adopting our encryption standards," he reported. "They still think they're getting basic technology, but it's giving their citizens secure channels outside Imperial monitoring for the first time." The 4 officers, the original team from the Dauntless, shared knowing looks. What had begun as a simple exploration mission had evolved into the most significant diplomatic achievement in Earth's history. "Do you remember when we first encountered their ship?" Carter asked, a grin spreading across his face, and Ambassador Zorn told us about their advanced fusion drives. Grant laughed. I had to bite my tongue when he described their water recycling system as revolutionary. I still can't believe we kept straight faces during that first demonstration. Blake added, finally allowing himself to laugh openly at the memory. Admiral Wells raised a glass of Altarian ceremonial wine. To the mission that began with restrained laughter and ended with genuine friendship. They clinked glasses as the station continued its orbit around the imperial capital. Below them, a civilization that had once seen itself as the center of the galaxy was slowly learning a new way forward, guided by the very people they had initially dismissed as primitives. They're calling it the Altarian Renaissance in the imperial media, Carter noted. A new golden age of progress and prosperity. And in a way, it is, Blake replied, just not quite the way they imagined. Outside the window, a fleet of Earth ships arrived, officially described as cultural exchange vessels, but carrying the subtle influence that was remaking an empire without firing a single shot. To the future, one where we all move forward together.